Hey everybody, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Nuns. Today we're in 2 Kings chapter number 18, so let's get started.
Okay, so there are highs and lows in the book of 2 Kings. Now this is a book basically about chaos. It's got politics, but it's also got personal problems. So it's got high level problems and it's got street level problems. There are problems at the White House and there's problems at people's house. And so there's problems everywhere in between. But where the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, was going through now like they're going into exile, the southern kingdom is experiencing for just a moment a brief revitalization. This revitalization comes through the entrance of a king, and his name is Hezekiah. He is probably one of the greatest kings in all of the history of Israel. Now, that doesn't mean that he's a perfect man. It says good things about him, and you're going to get to that. But also, he's a very real guy. So he's remembered as a great king and a faithful king and a godly king, but he's not remembered as a perfect king. By the way, we aren't either. And so the key to this story is to recognize that even among Israel's greatest kings, we're still waiting on the king. So all the way through, if you went all the way back to the days of Abraham, God had promised Abraham that from him that all the nations of the world would be blessed. And that those would be blessed who blessed them and cursed who cursed them. And so everything was going to kind of rise and fall on what God was going to do through these people. And so now they're waiting because they believe that this Messiah is going to be this kind of military, strategic, or even this political figure that's going to free them of their enemies and redeem them from all the hostility and going to bring back the glory days of David and Solomon. But that's not what God has planned. Even when you have Hezekiah, who is a high-level spiritual leader in the community, you don't have like heaven on earth coming into play. You're not going to get that until Jesus does what Jesus is going to do. Like he dies, he's buried, he's resurrected, he ascends, and one day he's coming back so that his will would be done on earth as it is in heaven, where he comes back and rules all things. And so one of the things I think that while we're reading through this, we're connecting the dots to this is a huge moment in Bible history. So much so that not only are we reading about Sennacherib's invasion and the Rabshakeh and all that. Remember, we talked about this when it talks about the Rabshakeh and all that. That's not that guy's name. That's his title. So there was a chief leader and a chief cupbearer and a chief this and that. They're the guys who come and they're speaking in front of the gates and the walls. So these are representatives of the Assyrian army, but that Assyrian army is not getting in the front door. This is a moment where even though Hezekiah is a man who lives by faith, in this moment he's really tempted not to walk by faith. He's really struggling, which is how we live our days. This story is recorded in Isaiah, it's recorded in 2 Kings, and it's also recorded in the Chronicles, because this is a high-level transition. Orville, be nice. A high-level like transition moment for Israel. This is really important. Now, what was your takeaway from this?
Okay, so my takeaway, Dad kind of prefaced this a second ago, but it comes from verses 5 and 6, and that says, Hezekiah relied on the Lord God of Israel, but not one of the kings of Judah was like him, either before him or after him. He remained faithful to the Lord and did not turn from following him, but kept the commands the Lord had commanded Moses. And so this kind of stuck out to me, I guess, because we're recording this on Sunday, which is the day that Dad preached the sermon about Elisha. And so the way that it kind of leaves us talking about Elisha, it was talking about how he followed the Lord, and that was just kind of his legacy. And so we kind of see the same thing right here with Hezekiah, and he's known for following God and being a super godly king. And so that's just something we gotta kind of strive for. Our legacy should not be about ourselves, but it should point others to God. And kind of the second thing that I got from this, so first it talks about how he was a really good king in the sight of the Lord, and he followed God with his whole heart. And secondly, it talks about how he kept the commands that the Lord had given to Moses, so like the Ten Commandments. So this is really important because we see here in the whole Bible, like the Old Testament is here to kind of give us the standard and the laws and just the bar to live up to, and just by trying to live up to it, we realize that it's impossible on our own. And then the New Testament kind of offers the solution, which is Jesus Christ, who's the only person to ever walk the earth to be perfect, really. And so it's just really cool that knowing that we can't do this without him, this kind of exemplifies that, right? Exemplifies? Yeah. Because it gives us the example of somebody who's done that. And so we can kind of apply that to our own life and how we follow God. We can follow him, and through that, we'll be able to follow his commands through the process of sanctification and him making us holier and him making us more like him.
Okay, so in chapters 18 and 19 in 2 Kings, you've got really the one story. You got the Assyrians coming to the land of Israel. They're knocking on the front door and they're saying, hey, we want you to just surrender to us. You know you can't beat us. You know you can't defeat us. Nobody and no God has been able to defeat us. And then they go through this big list. So like there's this enemy who's coming with threats to steal and kill and destroy. That's what the enemy does. One of the things we talked about was how the enemy, when they come to him, they're talking for everybody to hear. So this is not just threats. This is also threats with mass intimidation. And what they're saying is, hey, just surrender. Why are you even putting up a fight? Nobody could put up a fight against us. Nobody could do that. And they said, why would you even say that you're trusting in God? Hasn't Hezekiah removed all of the ways you're supposed to worship your God? Well, now we're seeing a bit of a problem, because what was happening, the Assyrians didn't recognize that there's only one place to worship God in ancient Israel. That was inside the temple. When Hezekiah destroyed all of these false altars, he's actually purifying the land. But the Assyrians didn't understand that, and probably a lot of the people didn't either. And so a lot of the people are going, hold on, well, Hezekiah has gotten rid of a lot of things. And so there is this kind of turmoil. You got to wonder if Hezekiah felt like he's out all on his own going, I'm trying to do the right thing, but nobody's seeing it the way I am. And so you got them, and they're saying, look, just surrender. And here's what they're saying. I said, look, if you'll just surrender, then we're going to leave you where we are, and we're even going to take care of you. We'll give you some chariots and horses, and y'all can act like you're in charge still. It's fine. And you just live your life with no change until we come back and get you. And when we get you, we're going to take you to another land, and you're going to live in a land very much like your own, and your life is not going to change at all. Well, that sounds like, if you're not wanting to fight, that sounds like, well, that's an okay deal. Here's the problem. What they're not saying is, in order to take you there, you're going to have to give up your freedom. That's not God's plan for them. God's plan is not for them to lose their freedom. Giving up their freedom is them giving up everything. So the enemy is not telling the full truth here, which, by the way, the enemy never does. One of the things to me that stands out in this story is at the very beginning, I think verse number 4. So what you've got here in the story, the basic theme of this is confrontation in faith. When you have confrontation, you have trouble. Can you still walk in faith? Because faith is easy when you don't have to, when you can see everything. Faith is difficult when you're having to walk without sight, when you're truly walking by faith. Okay? Everybody thinks faith is a good idea until they actually have to trust God. So Hezekiah has previously destroyed an ancient artifact. Now you can find the story of this back in Numbers chapter 21. In verse 4, it says that Hezekiah destroyed Nehushtan. Now, here's something for you to remember. Remember the Israelites back in the wilderness, and they went to a place and snakes were biting them. So God told Moses to construct a pole and wrap a bronze snake around it. And when they were bitten and about to die, if they would look up at the thing and they would believe that they would instantly be healed and they would live. It's a pre-picture of Jesus being lifted up on the cross. And if we look to him, we'll live. Well, the problem was they had kept this thing around because it had great significance, but they started to worship it. Hezekiah said, then it's time for it to go. Why? Because once the thing that has helped you becomes a stumbling block in you, now it's time to get rid of it. So whatever it is, if it is now hurting your relationship with God, It's got to go. Jesus is going to talk about this. He says, if your right hand offends you, what do?
Chop it off.
If your right eye offends you, what do?
Gouge it out.
That's right. And so you can take this, and we talked about this with anything. If your social media starts to offend you, what do? You delete it. If you've got hobbies and activities that are starting to take over, what do? You pull back from them. Why? Because the thing that's there, that's fun and fine and even good, once it starts to take over in an ungodly way, gots to go. Hezekiah knows this, and this is the setup for Hezekiah going, I got to walk by faith in the next chapter and see what God's going to do. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to see you tomorrow in 2 Kings chapter 19, and we'll see how God helps his people. Have a great day. Bye.